So this video is not going to be Linux related or tech related, a little bit of an off-topic kind of video, although tangentially you could theoretically tie this into some aspects of the tech space. But yeah, I came across a video in my YouTube feed recently called "This Video is Full of Regrets." It's the thumbnail. Of course, this is from Matt over at the Linux Cast, and if you're not subscribed to Matt, go check out his channel, subscribe to the Linux Cast, fantastic content. And this video, he talks about 5 videos that he regrets making because he's been a long-time Linux content creator. He's made, I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands of videos. And, you know, if you've made that many videos, certainly there's some that you're more proud of than others. I certainly can relate to that. You know, one of the common questions I actually get when I do any kind of collaboration or when people want to interview me sometimes, which occasionally will happen, you know, people will want to interview me on their YouTube channels or sometimes in online print content and articles and things. One of the things that often is asked is, hey, are there any videos that you regret? You know, what's your worst video, that kind of thing? And I always give an answer, but I'm always kind of uncomfortable giving that answer because in the back of my mind, I really don't think anyone that does any kind of creative work should ever disown their work. And today's video topic has kind of been on my mind. I wrote this down probably about 3 or 4 months ago, this topic idea. I've got a little org document where I jot down potential video ideas, and I've had this one here for a few months, and it's titled "Artists Should Stop Disowning Their Work." And basically I'm talking about anybody that creates anything creatively, right? We're talking about movies and music and YouTube videos. Maybe you write books, whatever it happens to be, any creative endeavor, whatever you put out there for the public to consume. You know, don't go back later and then say, you know what, that was just shite, right? Don't ever come back and say, you know what, I shouldn't have done that and that was bad, because in my opinion, even the things that you're less proud of, you know, some of the work you're doing that, you know, maybe, hey, didn't turn out the way you wanted to, it was still a positive experience for you to make whatever piece of art you made, because I do think it does make you a better artist going forward. And what really inspired today's topic when I first jotted this down a few months ago was I noticed a trend of rock bands especially, but, you know, music artists, famous, really big musical artists, many of them have albums that they years later will say, you know what, I disown that. That's not me. You know, I didn't mean to make that. You especially see this with like rock bands of the 80s and 90s, you know, like 10, 20, 30 years later, they'll come back and say, hey, this one album of mine that's really popular, sold millions and millions of copies, you know, it's a multi-platinum album. Then they'll come back years later and say, yeah, I didn't really like that musical style that we did on that album. That really wasn't us. We were just trying to make a lot of money. A lot of people really like the album, but I don't like the album, so I disown it. And I just think that is a rather poor thing to do. I mean, what's the point? If you're a movie producer or an actor or a musician or a video content creator like Matt over at the Linux Cast, or like myself, you know, sometimes, you know, we'll go out and tell the public, hey, I disown that work. I regret a certain work that I did. But again, what's the point? Because the public it's already consumed it. It's out there in the public space. Whatever I intended for it, however I thought the public would interpret it, whatever I thought the reaction would be, I have no real control over that. That's not something that's ever controllable by the artist. All you can do is create the work. However it ends up happening, you know, once it's out there for the public, that's out of your hands, and just let the results stand. I could easily talk about probably 100 different videos that I've made that turned out differently than what I intended, but I typically don't bring that up, is because, again, it's kind of pointless. In the end, you know, all you can do is, hey, I did what I did. There you have it. You know, take it for what it is. And what's funny is we typically, as creative people or as artists, musicians, whatever it happens to be, we typically only complain about the things we create that are not well received afterwards. We never complain about the things we do that are unexpectedly well received. I have made plenty of videos that were really lazy, low quality, kind of dumb videos, things I didn't spend a lot of time on, especially a lot of funny videos, a lot of meme videos. You guys know some of the stuff I sometimes do on this channel. And some of the videos that I've spent literally the least amount of time, I've gotten more views on. I've got a video that's got well over 3 million views, I think, on the channel. That is a 1-minute video that I literally may have spent, I don't know, 15 minutes, 30 minutes tops, as far as putting the video together, editing and all. And yeah, it is really, I won't say it's a low quality video, but I'm just going to say it's a low effort video. I didn't put a lot of time in it. And when I made it, I didn't expect it to do anything. And it's my most viewed video. I don't complain about that, so why would I complain about the videos that I put a lot of time in and then aren't well received? You can't have it both ways. And this is what kind of irks me with the musicians and the movie directors and the actors that will later disown their work, is that, sometimes the fact that something didn't turn out the way you intended is a good thing, right? I think, sometimes those accidental pieces of art end up being the best. And you really piss off your fans when you start disowning your work. Like when these rock bands start disowning some of their work, and these movie producers disown some of their work. Well, a lot of these songs, a lot of these movies have fans. Even if it was just, you totally disown this thing, it's not what you intended, it's an accident, right? Well, this accidental work of yours has accidental fans. There's fans of this accidental work that think, hey, this is the best thing you ever produced. And then you come out and you just shit all over your work, right? You piss off those fans that loved that work. You're basically saying, hey, you don't have no idea what you're even judging. You have poor taste. If you think that's a good work, man, you're an idiot, right? That's what you're basically doing to your own fans. In the music space, some famous examples of like bands that just totally disown certain of their albums. Some of the most famous ones are the Red Hot Chili Peppers. They disowned One Hot Minute. Van Halen, they disowned Van Halen 3. There's some other stuff out there. Motley Crue, I don't think they, I think they just completely regret ever making Theater of Pain. And regardless of what you or me may think about those albums, all three of those albums I just mentioned did sell. They sold a lot of copies. So somebody liked that music. In the movie space, it's real interesting because you have many examples, probably hundreds of examples of movies that were either directed or produced by somebody that later completely disowned that work and wanted their name removed off of that work because the finished product was not what they signed up for. It wasn't, like the director, it wasn't his cut. Somebody went and edited and changed the whole thing, and it's no longer his work, so he doesn't want his name on it. And there is this pseudonym that is famous in Hollywood. This pseudonym is the name Alan Smithee, and this is the name that gets assigned as the director of a movie on any movie where the director just removes his name from it. Like, hey, I'm done, right? So if you go search on IMDb, for example, for Alan Smithee, this guy has directed hundreds of movies, but of course, again, that's not a real name. That's not a real person. If you're a fan of especially bad horror movies, I love horror movies. So if you're a fan of especially cheesy horror movies of the 80s and 90s, man, it seems like half them things are directed by Alan Smithee. One of my favorite horror movie franchises is actually the Alien franchise, and Alien 3 was actually an Alan Smithee movie for a while because David Fincher is actually the guy that directed the film, but then was later, he left the project or he was fired or whatever. He didn't want his name associated with it. So therefore, a minute, it was an Alan Smithee film. And it's not the greatest of the Alien movies, but it's a pretty dang good film to be an Alan Smithee film. But you get a lot of really cheesy movies, like some of the Hellraiser sequels, which are really bad movies. A lot of those are Alan Smithee movies. Sometimes you get like really fantastic films, classic films that you'd be surprised that the director years later hates the film. He wants his name not attached to it, or he'll just be out in public and just tell people, hey, that's not the movie I made. I regret making it. Some famous examples include American History X. I know the director of that particular film did not like the finished product. It was too long in length. It was a different edit than what he wanted. Edward Norton, who was the actor that starred in that movie, had a lot more to do with really the direction and the editing of that film than the actual director. So he kind of disowns that particular work. I know Steven Spielberg actually talks about his regrets with Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. He sees that as not a great film, or what he does is he says he regrets making it kind of a dark, somewhat violent film, right? It has a different kind of tone than the other films in the Indiana Jones franchise. And later he would say, he kind of regretted, some of that. And of course, it's got the guy pulling out the guy's heart. There's eating snakes and bugs and monkey brains. There's some gross elements to that film, and there's some horror almost elements to that film. But he does say that's probably his biggest regret as far as his filmography. In the end, though, I really think again, artists should just not disown their work. Don't disown any of your work, right? Whatever it is that you created, it was inspired, right? Something within you, some creative forces were stewing, and it burst forth, and whatever it is you created, hey, let that thing stand. Anyway, ran over. Peace, guys.